Hi, and welcome to the Stellium Astrology Podcast. I'm Stephanie James, your host and the founder of stelliumastrology.com, which is my website that I've been developing for a number of years now. I am also the former horoscope columnist for Elle Magazine UK. I used to write a lot of horoscopes for my website and for some other publications as well. So I've done the sun signs astrology thing, but I'm also very interested in a variety of other areas of astrology. And I am currently setting this podcast up because I've always loved listening to podcasts. I've always been interested in podcasting. I did previously have a podcast with a good friend of mine in Detroit, Shana Collins. Hello, Shana, if you're listening. And we sort of stopped doing that for a while, and I love podcasting. I just really enjoyed it, so I wanted to bring that back into my life. And it was it's been in the pipeline for a few years, this podcast idea, and I just suddenly thought, no time like the present, so that's why I'm starting now. This is a listener-led podcast. That's how I aim to run this podcast. I want to get the listeners involved, and I just want to make it a fun and informative place. My goal for this podcast is to teach people how to access their birth chart, understand themselves from that level, and also, I want people to be able to empower themselves through astrology, which is kind of what astrology did for me. It really helped to empower me to make good choices in life. Sometimes I don't make good choices, but that's just because I like to override what's advisable and go for what I feel like doing, which isn't always the best thing to do, but I am only human. Well, I don't know about that. Maybe I'm not, but I'm here on planet Earth doing the human thing. So, that's kind of what I'm hoping to do. I want to empower people. I want it to be fun, and I love to share ideas. I love to talk about astrology, and I like to teach people aspects of their chart so that they can go away and be more aware of themselves in their everyday lives. So astrology really is a magical tool for self-awareness, for delving deep into self-exploration and understanding your relationships with other people as well. But you can do so much with astrology. And I do with my clients. We talk about, the past, where they've come from, experiences that they've had, difficulties that they've had, things that maybe they can't get over, which are causing problems for them in the present. And it's affecting their confidence to, make choices about the future. But this is interesting because we can look at current planetary transit, or as I like to call it, the planetary weather, and understand what's impacting somebody, based on the current planetary movements, and also the magic of astrology being a tool that reflects what's happening down here on Earth. It's not necessarily that the planets are making people do things, but they are reflecting in some way, in a symbolic way, the movements of what's happening down here. So I think it's very interesting to be able to use this ancient craft to be able to look at what's going on in the current, look at what's happened in the past, and use that knowledge and that hindsight that you've gained from looking backwards to project ideas about the future based on the calculations, the actual astronomical calculations of the future movements of the planets. So you will be able to predict or forecast events, knowing that previous events have affected you in a certain way, and you will see echoes or ripple effects from those previous transits that will be coming round again. So it's a great tool for anybody who likes to have a little bit more control over their life, because for me, being a Capricorn, I definitely do like to have an element of control, and understanding what may be coming for me is all I need to feel like I can let go and just trust. So anybody who has a bit of trouble with that, it helps. And let's be honest, when any of us are going through difficult times in our lives, we do like to know what's going on. Nobody likes to walk in with no clue. The only time I like to go somewhere with no idea about what's going to happen is when I go to the cinema and I go to see a film that everyone said was amazing. That's all I need to know. I don't want to know anything about the plot. I don't even really necessarily want to know about the genre or anything. I just want to turn up, watch the film and have a complete surprise. And I think that's the only time in my life I really want to have a surprise. The rest of the time I kind of want to have a good idea of what's going on so I can plan. And that's what astrology can do. It can help you plan. So this is what I do with my clients. And we talk about future events that could be coming, that we could, create a little bit of a cushion in case things get a little bit hectic. Or perhaps we might spot something that looks like it could be very, very positive and quite lucrative. So this is something that, not necessarily always lucrative, but, in any sense of being lucrative, not just the financial. So astrology is great for doing that sort of thing. And we can look at different branches of astrology. So synastry is the astrology of relationships. And you've got horary, which is where you ask a question and say, where are my keys? Or where's my cat? Or, will it be favourable for me to get involved in this business opportunity? That kind of thing. Should I apply for that job? What's the outcome if I do? Those kind of questions. Or we can elect a date. So when would be the best date for me to get married? Should I get married on this date or that date? Which are the better dates out of the two for a great big party? Or perhaps electing a more favourable date if you're going through a divorce and you want, to have a more lenient decision made towards you. So, things like that, launching a business, that type of thing. But not just those. Those are interesting branches of astrology, and I'm always asking questions and electing dates and things like that. But also, natal astrology, learning about, your past, learning about who you are, the psychological aspect of that, looking at the current affairs and what's going on, looking at the bigger, larger cycles, which actually happens to be quite a favourite of mine, actually, looking at the larger cycles. I find so fascinating because you can go throughout the history books, look at what was going on astrologically and see how astrology was playing out on a collective stage, on the anima mundi, the world soul. So I find that is probably one of my more one of the areas I'm more interested in for my own personal exploration. And it plays into every single one of our charts, because at the moment we've had some very interesting years previously, and these collective massive events, like the awful things like 9/11, for example, or the that huge tsunami that happened off of the coast of Japan, which triggered Fukushima to start giving out deadly nuclear gases, and up to current events like the coronavirus. These kind of things affect everybody in some way or another, whether it's people who aren't directly there affected by an earthquake, who experience anxiety because they this is something that triggers something within them, that they fear that instability, that shaky ground, that not knowing when something's going to happen. I was talking about control earlier. There's an element of this. It's a fascinating area of research, but we all get affected by collective events too. So that's kind of my area of interest. I'm always looking at these things, and I love sharing this kind of experience with my clients and helping them to experience that amazing feeling of being in the right place, or being accepting that things are as they should be sometimes, because astrology, it's playing out. Going to see an astrologer who's saying, I can see you're going through a difficult time because X, Y and Z, and they say, yes, that's exactly what's happening. I can't believe you were able to tell that just from my birthday. So it's a great, amazing privilege that I have been able to learn this subject to the depth that I have, and to be able to work with clients in order to help them And I also teach astrology as well. I teach it. I've taught it at astrology groups. I've travelled across the UK. I've travelled to India to present at conferences. So presenting my research. I've been on a few podcasts. I've talked about all sorts of things that are going on. I correctly predicted that the UK was going to Brexit, and I think I also correctly predicted that Trump would get voted into office, which he did. I also foresaw a virus that would be spreading in 2020, but I couldn't even begin to imagine the disruption it would cause on the planet. I knew it was going to be big, but not even I could be that creative. So researching astrology and teaching astrology is something that I'm really passionate about, and I see my clients, and when I see my clients I tend to try to educate them on their charts a little bit, but with my students we do look at perhaps the client charts that they're working with, or sometimes they just want to have a deeper understanding of their own natal chart, and I can go into a much more technical explanation for them and help them to understand their charts, and sometimes so it would be like a one-to-one session. But I have talk groups and things like that as well. I've also studied tarot and palmistry and Reiki. I'm a Reiki master practitioner, and I've studied counselling skills, which I've thoroughly enjoyed. I'm very interested in psychology, and I'm very, very, very interested in ethical practice, which is usually the bit that people find very boring. But the reason why it's boring and the reason why we have to follow these rules sometimes is because actually when people abuse their power, you can do great damage to another person, and you can hear some horror stories about people that do things that they shouldn't be doing. And that's what's interesting about ethics, is you might think that whole area can be quite boring, but actually when you hear the horror stories, I myself personally, when I hear of people breaching ethical codes of conduct, it shocks me so much that I want to know that I'm doing the absolute best by my clients and my students. And just in my daily interactions with other people, I want to take great care of the people that I interact with, because when you learn a language like astrology, a subject that is so rich and mysterious, it's just steeped in mystery, and it's so multifaceted, you could say one thing to a client thinking it was just nothing, and they could go away and think, what did they mean by that? And spin out into a very deep cycle of over-analysis, So it's really important to be careful how you communicate your ideas, which is why I'm so interested in being I'm very protective of anybody that I talk to about astrology, and want to do my best for them to get the best out of the experience and to empower them, because ultimately that's what I want to do. I want to empower them to be able to make the best choices that they can. And I think that my background so far, I'm always in a constant state of development personally through my skills. I'm very interested in, learning new techniques and learning new areas of study. So counselling skills was my recent, and really getting quite serious about that. And it taught me so much about, I learned more about astrology through learning counselling than I have done for so long. I didn't realise that going back and studying a subject that was non-astrology after you've learned astrology, it suddenly opens up whole new areas that you have a greater depth and understanding of. So astrology it really has been key in my life, and learning tarot was another way of enriching my vocabulary as far as interpretation and the interpretive arts goes. Palmistry was fun. I didn't go too far with palmistry, but I'm always interested in going back and learning more. And Reiki, as mentioned, I'm a Reiki master practitioner, and that was an amazing way of understanding, again, the importance of learning how to ground and protect, understanding people's energy points. It's a nice way to be able to offer people a service where I can help them to balance themselves a bit more. So that's kind of a little bit about me and what I've learnt. I was always interested in astrology since I was very young, and I decided to take things a little bit more seriously around my Saturn return at around 28, 29 years old, when life was not fun for me and I just did not know how to make it better. And I realised that I was just doing what everybody else wanted me to do and picking choices that looked good, but they didn't resonate with me. So, I'd always been into space and planets and astronomy. I used to rent so many books out from the library before we had the internet. When I was younger, going to the library and just getting all the books I could on the planets and learning all about them and stuff. So, I also doodled all the planetary glyphs, and I was very interested in astrology, and I had little karma cards that my mum got me. She always encouraged my interests, and it's nice because she came from a family where her dad was a hypnotist, and he was like he did it on an entertaining level, and so my mum always used to sort of like when it got to bedtime do a little bit of hypnotherapy on me. And my mum's maternal grandfather was a palm reader as well. So it kind of goes back a little bit. And I definitely think that there's something that goes through my family line, which has made me more inclined to this kind of thing. So I'm lucky really to be doing what I love. And I was very lucky actually to be able to write I've been able to present some really prestigious places, and work with some really with people presenting really high-end products that wanted to do something a bit different with the presentation, so I wanted to hire in an astrologer. So I've done some really fun things at events like the Saatchi Gallery, for example, in London, which was a really, really fun experience for me. And I've also written a monthly horoscope column in Elle Magazine UK, which was I think it was last year, and they now no longer have a horoscope column, but I thoroughly enjoyed writing horoscopes for Elle Magazine. And at the same time I used to write for my website, and I was writing a number of articles for publications here, there and everywhere. And I also have some stuff published as well. So I've thoroughly enjoyed and been I just count my blessings as far as I go, because when you follow what you love doing and you're really passionate about what you do and it's the right path for you, things do come your way. So I'm not saying you don't have to work hard for it, because I did work very hard for it, but it's one of those things that you just have to follow the path of least resistance, is what I tend to say. So that's a little bit about what I do and what I love, and kind of my aim of the podcast, as I said before, is a bit fun, to educate. I really want to teach people sort of basic astrology, because I think that you can never really do too much of the nuts and bolts, and hopefully then we can develop into understanding a deeper level of astrology. But you may come along listening to this podcast and want to skip right ahead to the more advanced stuff, and that will be coming. I don't know if I want to go straight into advanced level, but it's something that will be there along the line. I'm definitely going to be talking about stelliums, client stelliums, and also celebrity stelliums. Just anything really for you to get your teeth into that may be juicy for you. So yeah, that's kind of it really. I think that I've kind of covered everything that I wanted to in my first episode. Be warned that I will probably talk about anything that I fancy. I want it to be an astrology focused podcast, but it's going to be probably when I get a new obsession. I'll talk about that too. Maybe lifestyle choices, share some counselling skills, ideas, whatever I'm learning that I feel like maybe there's a bigger meaning behind it, or perhaps I just really love the idea and I want to share it. I am that person. I will be that guy that goes and talks to all my friends about their latest thing. So I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter. Like I said, I don't really like Twitter. Twitter is that kind of place, and I may change my view on this, but I feel like I'm walking into a room full of people just shouting at each other, and I don't really feel like I know how to get my voice heard in that room, and I don't know if it's the kind of conversation I really want to join. So I do follow people on Twitter, and I do retweet posts and things, and I share my content on Twitter, but it's just the platform that just doesn't, I don't really get it. I've also got a TikTok account as well, but I don't really use it that much, and so far I've just got videos of my cats. By the way, I have two black cats. They're gorgeous, little domestic short hairs, Archer and Lana. I don't know if you've ever seen the cartoon on Netflix called Archer, but that's who they're named after.
But something that I really wanted to focus on in this podcast is to really make it listener-led. So I really want to cover subjects that involve you as a listener. So I've created a form that I'm sending out to my subscribers, and my subscribers do get a little bonus as well as being able to be featured on this podcast. And there will be a little link that I send to you, which is just a little form for you to fill out so that I've got all your chart details so I can have a look, analyse and discuss. So I do already have a few people lined up for the coming episodes, and it just will make it a lot of fun if you can get involved too. I think it would really bring the podcast to life. What I would ask, and I would appreciate greatly, is if you could subscribe to this podcast, to rate it and to review it. It just helps to shuffle it up the list so other people can find it too. It just really helps me to reach out to the people that will find this content interesting, engaging, empowering, and to help them along their astrological journey. So if you could just subscribe to the podcast, rate it and review it, I will give you a shout out and say thank you. It helps me to know that what I'm doing is helping and engaging. I guess now it's time for me to just get on with the astrology side of things. So thank you so much for tuning in. I've enjoyed recording my first episode, and I look forward to putting out some more interesting subjects for you to tune in and enjoy and get involved as well. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.